Have you ever thought just how boring or ridiculous news commentary is today? Welcome to the RealJax podcast with Jim and Larry. The RealJax podcast. From crime and politics to entertainment, you can expect something different. Now, let's get real, Jax.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is RealJax with Jim and Larry, and obviously you don't see Jim. Jim got tied up, had a couple emergencies come up on short notice. I called my buddy Norm Brewer. Norm came over, and Norm's always good for these kind of conversations. He's going to be reserved, apparently. He's not going to go off too much today, so we'll have a good time. But I think this series might make some people a little nervous, and actually the number of questions, the number of messages I've gotten in reference to the things that people want to hear about made me create this series.
We'll give them an honest opinion and perspective.
Right. And we're not, we'll go after, I've said this before, we'll go after some people a little bit and go after some things. But I'm not going to say things bad, and obviously retiring from JSO, I'm not going to go after Mike Williams. I'm going to say that right up front. Mike's a nice guy. He gave me an opportunity, and I appreciate that. Mike's a really good guy. I hear people say he's aloof. He's not aloof. He's just very introverted, very quiet, very reserved, and very humble, really. I mean, he's a good guy. He's a nice guy. So can't say anything about him, but I will talk about the direction of the Sheriff's Office, or at least some of the management of the Sheriff's Office. Mike doesn't see everything that goes on in the agency, and obviously the people that run it sometimes. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into some of the things that have happened in the Sheriff's Office, and there might be a little blood in the water. I don't know. Hopefully not too much. And we'll get into why we have to change things. I spent about 2.5 hours yesterday with Ray Walden. And, you're good buddies with Ray.
My dad got Ray
about an hour
on
conversation.
the department.
Yeah, that's right. An hour conversation turned into 2.5. And Ray's got an extensive knowledge of law enforcement, being number 3 at JSO and then being number 2 in Clay County. And he, his thoughts and my thoughts as well has evolved over your career in law enforcement. You look at, how you start hard charging and, till Valhalla and all this kind of stuff. And then you realize you're in a public service industry and you got to service the public. And sometimes, I don't want to hurt feelings. Sometimes providing that service is kicking somebody's ass or shooting somebody, unfortunately. And
I've always said it's still a full contact sport.
It is. But the majority of it is customer service, and you got to treat people. And I've said it. It's kind of corny. I used to say it at roll calls. There's 3 Ps. Everybody laughed at it. But I'm telling you, if I spent some time with a watch, over time, they got less and less complaints because of it. I say be professional at all times, like on your camera, because now you are. They walk around with them on their chest. Be patient as much as you can, and that means take your time and talk to people. Explain why you've got to take an action or not take an action. Right. And then be patient as much as you can. And there's a point that you're not patient anymore. You give direction, you give commands, and people have to abide by them because it's a lawful command. So, and then don't argue and fester and make it worse. Take your action as quickly as possible. So,
well, before we take the listeners down the rabbit hole, do you want to mention some of the people paying the bills this week?
I do. Let's talk about the advertisers. Good looking out. So, first of all, obviously, it's Extreme Wings, my new employer. There's 4 locations: 12200 Atlantic Boulevard, 11565 North Main, that's Ocean Way, 160 Shops Boulevard, that's in St. Johns County at 210 and near 95, and 6337 Roosevelt Boulevard in front of the Target by the base. Family Sports Restaurant and Grill, best sweet tea in Jacksonville, and this more than just wings. And they're really good people, and they do a good job. They've hired me, and obviously I got a lot to learn, so we're gonna work on that starting next week. Tremendous Barbecue, 8927 Hurlong Boulevard, open since 2007. It's Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 8, Sunday, 11 to 3. Full barbecue menu, wings, shrimp, fish, everything's homemade. And they always take care of first responders in September. We've talked about that before. Advanced Window Tent, 5024 Sunbeam Road. Experience with Ricky. I've known him 30 years, and he does that kind of work. He does residences. He does commercial businesses. Any kind of tent there is really at any function at any building. So 3M Platinum dealer, highest level of 3M dealers around, and Secure One Protection Services, which is Jim's company. Anything to do with securing residences, companies, they do audio, video, anything to do with security protection services. And I think how long did he say they've been around? 35 years? I think 86 or something like that.
86,
yeah. Since 1986. So Jim and his brother started that, and that's obviously a great company, and they monitor alarms and do a lot of things in that arena. So,
and don't forget, I'm coming on board.
That's right.
Dibble Roofing. You can reach me at norm.dibbleroofing@gmail.com or on my cell 904-910-5728. I'll be happy to come out and look at your roof and give you an honest assessment and take care of all your roofing needs, as I did for Mr. Gale here at his palatial estate out there on the west side.
Yeah, placing my double wide out there. Yeah.
We'll take care of you.
Yeah, they did a great job on mine. I can't complain. Place looks beautiful. Get the windows done and some paint done, and I'll be back in business.
That's right.
100%. So anyway, we appreciate our sponsors. I need to go see a few of them probably this week, and we're going to get into a few things. So we created this series, segments, whatever you want to call them, and we're calling it Rome is Burning. So the point of it is to address when you look at the hypocrisy of the things that some people find important in the grander scheme of politics and necessity, at least in Jacksonville, when it comes to violent crime, they're missing the boat, right? I mean, it's an abject failure. Jacksonville as a whole has been an abject failure dealing with violent crime.
I think in the previous segment, it was mentioned that we've gone through Democratic and Republican leadership, both at the city and at law enforcement level. And, at the end of the day, geographically, some of the same areas in town are still suffering the same statistics as far as violent crime as they have now for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So it's almost the definition of insanity when we keep doing things the same way and expecting a different result. At some point, we have to stop it and come up with a different plan.
Yeah, we've got to evolve.
That's right.
What we're doing is not working. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that have happened, or at least have been the focus. And some of it will sound a little silly, but the point is this is what's been focused on, and we need to change that direction. So, we had a homicide lieutenant that created a new rotation schedule. Well, then apparently that had a lot of problems with that. He got moved or promoted actually to assistant chief, and they had to get rid of that rotation schedule. I know that in talking to people within homicide, and I tell you, I may talk about the management, but the talent pool within the Jacksonville Sheriffs Office, and I'm sure a lot of agencies around us, is cream of the crop. The people that do this job are the best of course, on the planet, in my opinion. I know I'm biased, but they are the best in the country. The best SWAT team, the best homicide unit, the best narcotics division, the best patrol division, the best investigations. I mean, I go one after another. Academy, I've mentioned those guys before. Those Academy dudes are unbelievable. Range guys, unbelievable. And they work. So it's not the people that do the job, it's the direction. It's the people pushing the direction of the agency. So that would be, chief directors, that kind of thing. So we need to talk about that. And, things will happen, and I'll give you an example. There's a female lieutenant that wanted to go to narcotics. They said she was on probation. Now, the phone call she got why she couldn't go because she was on probation was from a lieutenant who I love both of these people, by the way. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say the names. Was from a lieutenant that was on probation already assigned to narcotics. When you create that kind of, mentality that it's okay for one but not okay for another, then there's issues that need to be fixed. And obviously that comes from the top. That's got to be pushed down. So you get a mentality at some of the chief level. And I've heard this said. They call patrol Gen Pop, basic. You've probably heard that. Mm-hmm. Gen Pop, general population. When you get a mentality that your backbone is Gen Pop, basically that's an analogy that they're like prisoners. Mm-hmm. They're just general population prisoners. The lowest level of prison population you can have is Gen Pop, just sticking everybody in Gen Pop. When you look at your patrol division as Gen Pop or basic, you're missing the boat because they are the backbone. You literally could run an entire agency with nothing but patrol. You could do other investigations, maybe haphazard, may not. Homicide investigation, narcotics investigation wouldn't be the best thing you could do with a patrol division, but you could literally run an agency and handle calls with just patrol. So you can't have the mentality that they're Gen Pop, and to say that feeds down and affects the morale of the agency.
Well, I can tell you in 1988, when I first came on, that was not the message that was being delivered under Jim McMillan. Patrol, it was vocalized to us. We were the, quote, backbone of the department, and every other specialized unit was supplementary and supportive of us. We were the primary focus in patrol. But yes, that message does get diluted. And, you know, I've been gone since 02 or 04. So I don't really know what that trickle-down message is now, but, you know, if you look at the bulk of your human resource, and if it's in a particular division, then that's what should be that's where you should put your focus, and that's where you feed it.
Support.
And everything else is supplementary to that, including specialized units, detective division. Your first point of contact and your first line ambassador for any interaction, 98% of the time, is a patrol officer. Right. It's not a detective coming out knocking on your door. Patrol has already been there. That's and right. You have to support that. And it's been mentioned before, there's a burnout factor in patrol. I've always been an advocate. Even if you choose to stay in patrol, I think there has to be a mandatory rotation. Now this is my personal opinion. I don't think there should be a level of complacency because you work the same area, the same beat for 12 years. Right. I think just from a sanity standpoint, you need a fresh start and a fresh look throughout the agency. A break, yeah. Because, you know, it can wear down on you. And for me, I've always used the 7-year mark, that at 7 years right out of the gate, you need to start looking whether you want to go specialized, go inside, or just get a change of scenery within the patrol division, just for a sanity check, quite frankly.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about some of the things, you know, and I don't know how much I broke down the IACP study in the first inaugural episode. I talked about the breakdown of becoming patrol-centric, so we'll get into some of that. But we need to be patrol-centric, but we also need to focus on that. And I know there's a Matrix study years ago that said, you know, you should create a 40% free time. And they have something called the fielded unit analysis. Basically tells you how much free time in a zone. Let's take Zone 4, for instance. Zone 4, you know, back in your day when it first came on, that was a retirement zone. Well, now it's the busiest zone in the city. That's the west side. That's basically everything west of the river and south of I-10, all the way out to Bradford County almost. Riverside, all the way out. So in 2015, it became the violent crime leader on top of being the property crime leader in the city. So it was number 1 in property crime and number 1 in violent crime.
Are you talking about Juliet subsectors?
Juliet all the way out to Lima.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking the whole west side.
Right.
South of I-10, not north of I-10. So it broke down this IACP study and talking about becoming patrol-centric. And I'm not putting down the detective division. I'm just talking about how your manpower, because you got to have the detective division, you got to have narcotics, you got to have homicide. It probably should be double what they are. I've said that before. But your patrol division, you know, you talk about a burnout factor. I mean, some of those guys are handling 15 calls in 11.5 hours. You know, that's a multitude. Imagine doing that for 30 years in a row. You know, that's tough. So those people that do that job, I'm never going to call Gen Pop or basic. They are the cream of the crop if they're handling that many calls for that many years. So take Zone 4 and the IACP study, basically rattled a few cages at the end of 2017, pulled up the position control report with another lieutenant. We physically counted how many officers were actually riding beats compared to 2.5 years prior to that. And there was a 6% loss in patrol, 47 officer loss in patrol, and 203 officer increase in other divisions. And I'm talking about, you know, anything specialized, not just detective division. But
so it wasn't natural attrition not being backfilled. It was redissemination of human resource in a different direction.
Completely. So it's 203 officers increased in other divisions, 47 officer loss in patrol. And Ray Walden recognized that there was a lot of shortages, and he's probably the only director I know of that actually someone wanted to create another bike unit. You know, that one zone had like 3 bike units, and he said, well, if we got enough people to do that, I'm going to move 10 people to Zone 4. So he pulled those 10 people and moved them to another zone, because if you take the IACP study, so basically I went to crime analysis and I said, do we have a mechanism to break down the city and determine what our manpower allocation should be? Because it's always been administrative judgment or guesswork or spitballing, whatever you want to call it. So pulled that out, took that IACP model. There's a scientific model, it's really not scientific, but IACP is pretty good. It weights calls, you know, like a barking dog gets one and a homicide gets something else. It breaks out the number of assets says you should have based on that number. Well, then you take what's called the strength report or whiteboard, which is a monthly report that you report up the chain of command that says this is how many officers you have. So it knows, how many front counter people you have, from your assistant chief on down through your zone secretary down to your beat officers and bike officers, whoever, wherever their assignments are. So based on those numbers, I basically created an overlay and then sent out a PowerPoint to all the other lieutenants because they were asking, where is all our people?
Now, did you do it citywide or did you break it down by zone?
Citywide. I did it by zone because you had to do it by zone.
Right.
So going around the horn, we'll say the west side, zone 4. At the time, that was the end of 2017, it said we needed 97 more officers in zone 4. That's 100 officers. Zone 3, which is south side, basically where we're at now, is like mid-60s. Zone 2, which was, Arlington, Reese area, 40 plus. Zone 1 and 6 were pretty close to even, maybe 10 over, 10 under. And Zone 5, I think, needed 20-something more. But it's easy, 300 officers right there. 250, 300 officers. But we had moved 203 to other divisions, was my point. So I got called to the principal's office. He's a director now, but he was a chief then. And look, he was great about it. He said, hey, why'd you do this? Because I'm sure there was concern that it was going to get out. I mean, I sent it through an email, so you can pull that. So I sent it out to all the other lieutenants, and then my chief said, hey, we got to go downtown. But he was the one asking all the questions.
So, your chief says, hey, we got to go downtown.
Yeah. He wanted to know. He wanted to know that. I said, look, I can look this up and figure this out.
Right.
It won't take me that long. They're physically counting 1,599 officers took some time and putting some numbers together. And I did do some analysis of response times. There was a little West Side math in that. I'll give them that. This probably wasn't the most statistical, perfect analysis there was, but the people, the actual assignments, those were 100% correct because where they are is where they are. I mean, there's no getting around that. It wasn't like this 7.2 minutes versus this 6.9 minutes, an increase of this much time in response time. That might have been a little off. I'll give them that.
Let's back up, Larry. What prompted you to do this analysis, and was it something you came up as a needs, or is this something that you had discussed with others, and what kind of brought you to the point that we need to really sit down and dissect this and see where we are?
Well, I had been, as a zone commander, because I've been a zone commander for 2 years, fussing about the manpower. They would, you would lose people and not get a backfill position. You would look at the numbers of crimes and you would scream, I need more people. I got these numbers, and you look, number one in violent crime, number one in property crime. I need the people to be able to address it. And you look at the number of calls they're handling. And actually, Crawford's dad was he's the crimes officer over there, and he's a wealth of knowledge, and he could give you any information you want to know. So you start screaming, and then you realize that you're losing people, and you're not getting replacements for them. And then you go, I got obviously demoted, moved back to patrol, and you go into it, and they said, yeah, we used to have this many in these two squads, 22, 23, 24, and you get there, and there's like 10, 9. Now you go up to 15, 16, but you're not ever where you were. So, and then other lieutenants would complain. It's like, man, I don't know where all my people are. Why our cap is this. We have this many. Where are all these people at? I said, I'll find out. So I did. And I put this together in a PowerPoint and sent it out as, patrol state of affairs, basically. That was the name of it. And then shortly thereafter, I got called down to the principal's office.
So this was not presented at the Sheriff's ComStat?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
But, so Sheriff's,
crimes?
yeah, well, I remember back, yeah. So I think when I left, I think it was, they were doing ComStat reports. So, you can speak to this, it's kind of like we expect you to do more with less. And if your reasoning for not being able to get certain things done is an obvious elephant in the room here of you've taken away 35% of my human resource to do this with, that's not the answer they're looking for. They're looking for getting more out of less because they've taken your resources and disseminated them. And, if they're going to do that, that's fine. But then the onus would be on them to do the analysis of, okay, well, what yield did you get by moving those resources? It's called opportunity cost. When you take something from A and give it to B, there's a cost there in order for it to do that. So that benefit, when you move it from A to B, has to more than outweigh the benefit that you were getting over in A. Right. And to the citizens, to your point, first point of contact, okay, response times, being able to do proactive patrols, which I'll be honest with you, in the last several years of my career, proactive patrols was something that you almost had to call time out and put it on a calendar and schedule it.
Right.
Because a minute ago you said 15 calls in a shift. That was an average night. Whereas back, like you alluded to, when I first came on, Zone 4 at 2 a.m., even the bad guys went to bed. Yeah. So we all hit Denny's and had breakfast, or did other things, and then we go to check off at 7 a.m. But latter in the career, these guys are running all shift, all the way up to 7 a.m. in the morning, handling 15, 20 calls. Yeah. So there is an opportunity cost. And, the fact that you or somebody like you had to do that analysis, that alone is a problem.
Well, funny thing is, the IACPs, International Associations of Chiefs of Police, we basically use their model, their mathematical model, to figure that out. How many assets, as in police officers, need to be within each zone. Well, shortly thereafter, within 6 months to a year, they actually hired the IACP to come in and do an analysis of the whole agency. Well, problem is that's been kicked back and forth. I've heard rumors about this. There's a rumor. I mean, it's been supposed to come out for about 2 years. I think 2018 they started it or something like that. I heard the first version come back and said we were only about 50 officers short of where we needed to be. The problem was they included corrections in those numbers, and you can't include that on the sworn side. So that's hundreds of officers they included in the total analysis, and there's problems with here. I don't know. It's been 2 or 3 years, and the report hasn't come out yet. So I don't know if somebody's kicking it back, doesn't like the way it looks.
Well, they might as well just throw it away, and here's the reason why. That analysis is a fluid analysis. It's constantly changing. If you're going to make changes now based on facts 3 years ago, those aren't the facts as they sit here today. Right. So the needs have changed over the last 3 years. So that analysis, whether it's being done internally or farmed out to a third party that's experts in that, it has to be up to date. It has to be fluid, and it has to be easily implemented without all the bureaucratic red tape, which, I'm sure you want to address that, but I mean, you come up with a grandiose idea, but by the time you implement it, it may not be so grandiose anymore. It may be obsolete. It might be like that new smart TV that you just bought, and by the time you plug it in at the house, there's 3 more that's better.
Yeah, and you get more apps on it. But, my analysis in 2017 wouldn't be accurate today. So
exactly.
You couldn't look at that analysis and say, I still need 97 officers. It may be less. It may be more, but you're going to have to redo that. And
So I've always been a solution. You bring us a problem. I've always said, if you bring me a problem or a concern, at least bring me a couple solutions. So Larry, what's the solution?
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of the other things, and we'll break down, some of this I'll probably avoid. I mean, I was going to talk about some things, but I'll probably leave some of it alone for now. I've got a solution. We're doing 3 in this series. Basically, I think that's what we're going to do is 3 in this series, segments, whatever you want to call them. And the last one will be kind of a breakdown of how you can make improvements.
Yeah.
So, they have overtime that they, and you remember they use overtime every year. Well, one of the problems they ran into recently is they used to get money from, the city got money for your insurance premiums, your health insurance premiums. Well, little did we know that the sheriff's office was using the extra overtime and basically robbing Peter to pay Paul out of the overtime money for the insurance premiums. Well, now the FOP has broke away from the city, so now the FOP gets those overtime premiums, he gets those insurance premiums, and the city doesn't have those monies for overtime. So all the extra violent crime initiatives that they have been doing for the last couple of years, because they don't have enough in patrol, they're not going to be able to do those overtime initiatives like they were because they won't have the monies. The monies are now at the FOP's hands, as they should be, because the FOP's handling insurance now. As JP Offutt and the lodges broke away, and the fire union broke away from the city when it comes to health care, which they did a great job, because now health care is a little bit lower because first responders actually use less health care than the average person. So
for a layman out there listening, such as myself, you're telling me that if my health insurance premium's $100 a month, the city was getting, say, $5 of it, and they were using that for violent crime initiatives back in the day. In a nutshell, they were using some of that money.
Yeah, they were probably using, if whatever the city was paying for your premiums, they were using that $100 as money they could use for overtime initiatives until it would come back on the other side of the city paying the premium.
Right.
So, yeah. So, let's see. Pursuit policies. We've had different pursuits that have been problematic, and we have a unit called Professional Oversight Unit now, and they break down pursuits. And kind of depends on whose pursuit it was and how certain folks look at it. It's not just pursuit policy, it's disciplinary process. It's not always consistent. You might realize that. Sometimes some people are treated differently based on a target on their back or the fact that they've pissed somebody off, and that mindset has got to change, the morality. I know that they've probably defrocked. I know in 1 month it was like a record. They defrocked, 10, 15 people in 1 month, actually took their police powers and put them downtown. And then, of course, gave it back to them and they realized what it was. And there are some explanations that they can't have these people on the street while they're doing it until they determine if it's a willful departure issue or it's a criminal issue. They can't have them on the street. Kind of understand that. But something's going on that we're having this much discipline this fast at such a rate. Now, what do you relate that to? I mean, is that hiring practices because they're speeding them up or lowering the standards, or is it just management, morale? I mean, I don't know.
Well, let's go back to the policy itself. So the policy itself should not be subjective based on the personalities involved. No. A policy is a policy is a policy, and if applied fairly, it doesn't matter who the players are. Either you're in compliance or you're not in compliance, regardless of what your relationship is with any clique or group of people within an agency. Yeah. So even if your fair-haired good old boy messes up, he's going to have to step up, or she's going to have to step up and take that responsibility and own it. It amazes me that they have a subgroup just for that. Yeah. Those things actually should be addressed on the front end, not in the back.
Well, you take a response to resistance or pursuit policy, it goes up through the chain of command, and you get a chief, an assistant chief, a lieutenant, whoever, whatever level it starts at. Let's say an officer, then a sergeant, lieutenant, assistant chief. They all see it, and then it goes professional oversight. If it's pursuit, a lot of times they'll send it to RTR board, and then they'll take a look at it, or they'll have. Let's say it results in an officer-involved shooting or something along those lines. They'll break down. And I know they've had some pursuits that at the end of it resulted in OIS, officer-involved shooting. But I've got a buddy, I know he had one, sat there for about 2 years, and I don't know what his discipline was. And, it was one, no one was killed, and there was no, high speeds were not an issue, and there was no gunfire at the end. And then you get one that's a little bit different. And the policy itself is basically forcible felonies, which we both know. Or reckless prior to police contact, and that it's a little too gray. I mean, I think we've broken it down too much because that's kind of open for interpretation. So how they look at those, and it depends on who it was and what the violation they saw was. I know there was one where there was one done by a lieutenant. He actually was in a pursuit, and unmarked vehicle, pitted it at 115 miles an hour for reckless driving. So. He got the same thing, and good dude. He got the same thing as another one that had much less incidence of problems within that pursuit. Now he saw it as a reason to use the guy's driving behavior was something that he could authenticate a reason to use deadly force. If he can do that, he can do that. If he can articulate that, I get that. But we've got to. Professional oversight's doing some, and obviously they do some good things because they're looking at everything we do, body-worn camera. A lot of that goes internal affairs now. And I've said before, I'm a big fan of body-worn cameras. Everybody was apprehensive and argue with people, but they show vast majority of the time that officers are doing the right thing.
Right.
So, is that something else you got? Oh yeah. Where'd you pull that? Did you just pull that offline?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. Police pursuits pose inherent risk to the community as well as to those involved. Prior to initiating a pursuit, every officer is required to determine if the pursuit is justified. And there's a lot of reason to determine. And plus, there's other factors they have to consider. And I know everybody used to, because I was very tight on pursuits. And used to, when I was first made lieutenant, I was very liberal with them. But the policies changed over time, and you had to address it differently. But, you consider time of day, traffic, weather conditions, all those things had to be considered as well. So
that was not in the book when I was there.
Yeah.
That actually is very subjective. And when you put that in front of an officer and you're an inquiry board, really the only perspective that truly counts at that point in time is the officer doing the pursuing. As long as he can articulate based on that policy, his reasoning for doing the pursuit and why it's justified. Now, back when I came on, I thought it was more black and white, as to when you can pursue.
It's a little gray now.
It looks a little diluted.
And there's sections not in there as far as what you can pursue. But, today we've kind of just spitballed a bunch of things that's going on in the agency. We'll talk about some more tomorrow. We got to change the way we do things. I mean, we've got to evolve as a city and an agency. And if we're not being effective from everything from our policies to our contacts with the public, to having a mechanism that breaks down the staffing of the agency, really it's been, man, whatever they thought. And like you said, if we're hiring somebody and then they look at it and come back 3 years later, that's not much of a valid analysis. So we got to do some things, or the city has to do some things. I know that the mayor's trying to bring people from Chicago and LA over here. He's putting up billboards in other cities. I mean, KTS Dre, the rapper in Chicago, just got 64. He got shot 64 times, I think, today or yesterday.
They were going to shoot him 65, but I heard they ran out of bullets.
Probably, yeah. Well, if he maybe he was on his way to Jacksonville, if they just
he's probably going to move down here and buy one of these houses and pay $60,000 over actual value for it in cash.
Right. So, we got to do some things different. I don't know if Chicago is probably the city we want to be pulling from. Their homicide rate's probably much more significant than ours. Now, maybe I don't know if they're the homicide. I'm sure they're the homicide capital of Illinois.
No, man, they got real strict handgun laws there, so it's paradise.
Well, they're probably the homicide capital of Illinois, just like Jacksonville's the homicide capital of Florida. So we need to change that.
Miami loves us.
Oh yeah, because we're top. Number one of the last 13 or 14 years.
They say if you can make it to Tampa, you're probably pretty safe in Florida, because if you can make it through Jacksonville and get all the way to Orlando, Tampa, you're probably going to be okay.
I was in Tampa this last week, and I didn't feel as unsafe in some places in Jacksonville. I felt so.
Tampa's got issues too.
Well, every big
city.
Yeah, every big city does. But Jacksonville's not done a very good job of trying to address it here locally, in my opinion. And they got to change the mindset. Got to evolve.
I agree.
So I think that's what we'll finish there today. Crawfish, you got anything? We miss anything from today's bullet points?
Nope.
Yeah. Norm, you gonna hang around? We'll do another one.
Let's do one more.
All right. We'll call that episode 1 of the Rome is Burning. And when I say Rome is Burning, it's like Nero or the Emperor's playing the fiddle and nobody's paying attention to the crime rate. So
that's it.
We'll talk about that at episode 2.